Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, beautiful British Columbia, Canada. And it's a beautiful fall day here in northern Canada, and the weather is changing already. The beautiful season is the fall. And we have a special guest today. Her name is Katie McManus, and she is in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, the United States of America. Katie's motto is stop being a weenie, and which speaks perfectly to her belief that anything can be accomplished with a little bravery. And Katie is a mission-driven ADHD entrepreneurial coach and expert. And Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm jealous of your sunshine.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about you, Katie.
Yeah, so I'm a business coach and strategist, and I never anticipated being here. All throughout my 20s, I jumped jobs, I switched careers, I did a stint in acting and sales in the wine industry, and I always had a really low self-esteem or low confidence because I figured, okay, well, if I can't stick with anything, I'm never going to become an expert.
Right.
And it's funny, like I kind of tripped and fell into what I do now, and I can't imagine doing anything else. And it's amazing being able to support other entrepreneurs, because what would happen in my career is I would get into a job, I'd be very passionate about it. And then about a year to a year and a half in, I'd get bored, which is not good when you're in sales. Like you can't get bored of the conversation you're having every day.
No.
So I think what I do now is perfect for me because I get to jump in and out of all my clients' businesses, and I get that variety that is so necessary for folks with ADHD.
So what triggered you to find your passion?
Oh, that's a question. I think I always knew I had a passion for helping people, but I wasn't sure what that would look like. I think when I was in school, I thought I wanted to be a teacher until one of my teachers pulled me aside and told me how little teachers make in the United States. And that was kind of the wake-up call that I needed. But I had coaches all throughout my 20s. Like anytime I'd kind of get to the last leg of being happy in a job, I'd hire a coach, and they'd kind of like talk me through jumping off the cliff and, figuring out what was next. And I always thought that's what I want to do. I want to be able to help people in this way. But I always, boiled it down to, well, you're too young. You're too young. No one's going to pay attention to you. You're not going to be able to help people. No one will see you as credible. And then what really it took is I was in a very serious car accident in 2017. And I had a mild traumatic brain injury, and I had to be off work for medical reasons for about 8 months.
Whoa.
And in that time, I figured, okay, well, it's now or never.
Right. So that changed direction for you. Where did ADHD come into the picture?
Well, I was diagnosed when I was 7. So it's
Right.
always been something that, I've needed to figure out creative ways to study, creative ways to stay interested in classrooms, creative ways to get my work done when I worked in traditional 9-to-5s. And also there are just different things. Like I worked with a couple coaches early on in my business, and there were some sticking points where we just weren't the right fit because they were neurotypical. They had a way of doing things, and they were very prescriptive in here's how you do the thing, not understanding that people who are neurodiverse don't do things that way.
Yeah.
So I kind of became created my own journey out of starting my business, and I started attracting all ADHD clients without even mentioning that I had ADHD.
Right.
And so, your niche kind of finds you sometimes. So I kind of realized, okay, well, if I'm already signing all these clients who have ADHD, I might as well just become the ADHD business coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were still very early in that. There was still a lot of stigma around ADHD when you first found out at 7, right?
There was. I found most of the stigma came from older generations just because they didn't understand. For them, like anything that you might go to a psychologist for really freaked them out. But for the most part, I was lucky. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is very liberal, very open, very progressive. And I had incredible parents who were very supportive and just wanted me to find a way that worked for me. And then, I just kind of figured out my own way. I'm very fortunate. There are a lot of people who had that stigma growing up, and it really prevented them and their families from seeking any kind of help or support. And now they're in their 30s and they're just finding out, oh my God, well, my brain just works differently. And it's explaining so much. Do you have any experience with ADHD?
I am.
You do? Okay, awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but what you may find interesting is that I'm nearly 83. I was born
You look good.
Well, thank you. I was born in 1940 in northeastern Holland. During the war years.
Right.
So I still remember the main parts of the war, the liberation in particular. We were liberated on April the 12th, 1945. My mom raised 3 kids because my dad was drafted into the Dutch army. And they didn't, the last time they heard from him was when Rotterdam was bombed, and they didn't know if he was dead or alive for 5 years. And so that was tough. And then parts that I remember is cold, hunger, still do today, and then anxiety, because there were a lot of bombings that happened over our area into Germany. So it always it affected me in terms of PTSD. The inner child I got counseling for in my late 50s, very emotional actually, and then I was not a success story in school. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. Now, I don't know many people that failed grade 3.
I was close. I was almost there with you.
So the interesting part about it, Katie, is that I do a lot of presentations these days, and I was giving a presentation to about 50, 60, 70 people, and so I mentioned that about grade 3, and I always say, I don't know anybody that is grade 3, and this lady way in the back said, I got grade 3. I said, okay, just the 2 of us, but a lot more than just the 2 of us.
It's funny. I wonder what the point in your life where that stops being an embarrassing thing and starts being like a fun fact about you.
So let me tell you when, and you may find this interesting. So then they said, okay, what are we going to do with this guy, right? So my parents were very supportive and all of that sort of thing, but then when I was 14, they said, well, no use sending him for the 4th time to grades 3 or 7. And so they had to get me a job. And so they got me a job. I liked lumber. My dad worked in the lumber industry. My grandfather was a master carpenter. He said, well, let's send him to a furniture factory. And then at nights we sent him to school to become a furniture maker. So that's
Incredible.
At 14. So that's what they did. But then a couple of things happened. I still remember being liberated April the 12th, 1945 by the Canadians. It made such an impression on me that I always knew from that point forward I wanted to go to Canada. That was the land of my heroes. And so I wanted to go when I was 17. They wouldn't let me. And then I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for a little more than 2 years. And then I finally went to Canada when I was 24. But I felt I had been a failure because in Holland it is this way, is that, once you become, in your late teens, then you will get married, hopefully, and then you want to have a good job and you want to buy a beautiful house. And the question is always, where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have any diplomas. And my friends that I went to school with had all gone to colleges or universities, and I became what they called a laborer. And I always felt good about what I could do, but obviously all of that was something that was an issue in Holland. So I felt I had to start all over again. So that kind of fitted with me going to Canada. And then my dream was to build a lumber mill. That meant I had to go to Western Canada, British Columbia. That's where all the timber is, and and then I wanted to start with nothing when I came there, and so I had a suitcase, 2 sets of clothes, 3 books, and I took for $150 with me when I left Amsterdam. So then I came to Vancouver. I couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. And then, fortunately, when I arrived in Vancouver, there was a fellow in the immigration department that spoke German. I could speak some German, and told him what I wanted to do. He said, Prince George, about 500 miles north of Vancouver. British Columbia is a big province, right?
It's huge.
It's about 1,000 miles north to south and east to west, also about 1,000. This is physically in the center. So when I came off the bus here in July of 1965, I had exactly $25.47. But
Which, can I ask, what would that be today?
probably 4 or 5 times more than that. But
Okay, so still not that much.
not much. And then the foundation that I have, though, is attitude. I was always positive. I forget the negative. I don't want nothing to do with it. I had a passion of the dream of being successful prove to me that I can be successful. And my dream was to build a lumber mill. And then the other one that I had is work ethic. I get up early, I give it all that I get, and what follows is success. My employees made this for me, actually, so that's why I got it here. So I started with nothing, came off the bus, and here comes the story, is that even after I already started I barely was here for 2 years, couldn't speak the language. I was a superintendent already within a year of one of the largest lumber mills in this area. And then within 2 years, I was already part owner of a sawmill and had the option to buy the mill, stayed in the motel, bought the motel, and and that was, of all places, in the Yukon Territory. The Yukon Territory is next to Alaska at the far north. I call it the Yukon Territory. It was Watson Lake, about 700 people. And it snows in July, so you don't know if it is late or early. That kind of a place.
Yeah.
So I did that for 5 years and then came back to Prince George and then became successful. But everybody said, oh, you're so successful. I didn't feel that way. Right. And then what happened, and here is the point that I'm making, is that one day I was, in 1997, I already was 57 years old. I walked into a store, and right here in town, I picked up this book, and I opened it. I still don't know why. The book's title was Driven to Distraction, and it was about ADHD. And I said I had never even heard of ADHD. The more I looked at it, I said, oh my God, that is me. And the more I read about it when I was in the store, standing there reading more and more, finally the guy said, are we going to buy it? Or no, I did not quite, but I did buy it. and then I wrote in it in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am, because there was stigma, because it likely meant a mental disorder of some sort. And for a long time, I looked at Google and did more research. And then finally, after 5 years, I went to my doc that delivered my 2 daughters and was a good friend. But that's how ashamed I was of it. That one day I walked into his office and he said, why are you here, John? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we looked at it together and did all the other kind of things. Yeah, I do. And then it took me probably up to about 6 years ago, I started to speak about it more. I became more part of presentations that I was doing. And then the other part that I did is I wrote a book, Against All Odds. And that's more than anything about my life experience. It's not about hoorah, hoorah, John, how successful he is. It is just the opposite. In spite of it all, going through all the ups and downs. So very popular, actually. We'll send you a copy of it.
Oh, yes, I would love one. Thank you.
Now, the other one that you may like is that, so I became more vocal about ADHD, and I'm convinced that it is a superpower. And so as I started to do more presentations, I felt that it still was not well understood, and that although there are books available, but not some that are written by ADHD individuals. So
Right.
I wrote a book, ADHD Unlocked. Very popular. It's written by ADHD. You can open it anywhere, start reading, go either back or forward, or keep opening.
Right.
Very popular. And
Yeah.
and the other point that I found, Katie, is that I thought reading about it, that about 8% of the population probably is affected by ADHD. I believe it is more like 20%, if not more. And,
Right.
And then the other part about it is that I wrote this book, and you see, not only my book, there's other books as well, but about this, what I'm saying, is not only for people that are ADHD, but also people that are affected by trauma and subsequently have attention issues that
Right.
makes it difficult for them to study in the setting that other people are used to. And the other part that I'm saying about the book is that anybody virtually around the world will encounter people with ADHD, either in their family, in the wider fixed circle of friends, or beyond that. And it is important, and this comes to your point really, it is important for people to read the book, to understand them, because they tend to be a little different. And that's a good thing. And it takes, I believe, the stigma away from it. It is not a disorder. It is not a liability. The key is to understand it and then engage it, and then from there and then the sky is the limit.
100%. And, to your point, when I first got diagnosed as a 7-year-old, like, they tried to explain it in a bunch of different ways, but of course they're explaining it from the practitioner, the person diagnosing's perspective. So they're looking at criteria that they're going to see in a clinical environment. So all the things they're listing off, I didn't really connect with.
No.
So I just kind of like, okay, so my brain works different. Awesome. Like, let me just continue with my life, find different ways to study. It wasn't until I became an adult and I started talking to other adults who had ADHD that I started really recognizing with the experience of it, because like there had never been any content available to me as a kid that I connected with, that made sense for me.
Correct.
Right? Because like everyone's like, oh, you're easily distracted. I don't see myself as easily distracted. I see myself as very good at concentrating, but just not on the right things that other people want me to concentrate on.
I have to be interested in it. If I'm not interested in it, I don't connect. I will hyper-focus, then, and the amazing part about it is, and you feel the same, and that's why it's so exciting talking to you about it, is that, so I found out by the time I was 57, and then it took me a long time until I kind of understood it. And only 6 years ago, I started to, can you imagine, in my late 70s already, I started to become an author. And I have,
Wild.
against all odds, I have ADHD unlocked. And then the other one I'm going to send you is this one, Finding Your Passion, Living the
Yes.
Dream. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then those are the ones that I have, and I'm writing two other ones that are coming out next year. So that's my dream, to write a book every year. The
Yeah.
other part about it is that to be a podcaster before I understood it, and before I didn't feel good about myself. I did not
Right.
feel confident. And there was another trigger for me that made all the difference in my life. The one was obviously coming to Canada and then saying, okay, I will prove to me that I have the ability to be successful, whatever that means to me. And then the other part is that gaining that confidence, becoming confident and have the confidentiality, a bit of a challenge because I grew up speaking dialect, not even High Dutch, and then having to become effective in communicating in English was a little bit of a challenge. But obviously, I'm doing okay on it. But the other part was that I was still having difficulty, even at a late age, to have that confidence and that I was okay. I was doing things, and I'm not asking for a hurrah, but I felt I was no lesser than because of
Right.
whatever. And somebody dragged me to a meeting of Toastmasters.
Yes. Awesome. I love Toastmasters.
So I went down there, and then I said to an ex-sister-in-law. So I said to her, she said, "I want you to come to Toastmasters." I said, "What are they doing?" She said, "Well, it's speaking and listening and all of those kind of things." And I said, "Are they going to ask me any questions?" And she said, "No, they won't, because it said if they are, I'm not going." So anyway, there I'm sitting in the meeting. I'm halfway through the meeting, and somebody says, "Hey, John, tell us a little bit about you." And I said, "Oh my God, so." I was an absolute basket case. The worst example of that I've seen in Toastmasters. And the following week, I was not going to go back, but I did go back for 10 years, became a distinguished Toastmaster, and and obviously the results of it were unbelievable for $2 a week or whatever that cost then.
Right.
There is probably Toastmaster clubs all throughout the world, especially in North America. Probably, as we speak, probably 500,000 people are part of classes in Toastmasters, and probably 5 to 10 million people around the world have taken portions of Toastmastering, and it made him more confident in who they are, the ability to think, with in a coherent manner, and become what I believe is very important about Toastmasters, become good listeners.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so all of that combined, gaining that confidence, discovering ADHD and how it affected me, I became a late bloomer. I'm actively, as an author, I'm a professional speaker. All started after my 75th birthday.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing it today, and I'm very active in terms of health and going to the gym. I want to be 120. So that's kind of what I'm working on.
Well, it sounds like you're on the right path. I have to say, I'm with you. Toastmasters also changed my life. When I was in college, I had this really traumatic experience because I hated public speaking. I was really bad at it.
Me
And
too.
I got voluntold by one of my professors, one of my French professors, to speak at this literary luncheon. He needed someone to read a letter from one of the authors who wasn't going to be there, and there were 300 people, all published authors, that were going to be in attendance. And I said, "No, I don't want to do it." And he's like, "You're going to be fine." And I was so bad. I stuttered and I stammered and I sweated through this short little letter. And I was so bad that people came up to me at the end after I'd finished and apologized to me for how bad I was. So when I started a job and they had a Toastmasters club within the company, I was like, okay, I need that. Because I always had this sense that speaking was going to be a part of my career. I had no idea where it was going to play a part, but it's an amazing organization.
But you were lucky that you recognized it and saw that, was something like I did as well. I was very good at, I've always been a good writer, amazingly. And I made this presentation to government on something to do with the forest industry, how to change policy. It was a very good presentation. And I was so effective that I was invited to make a presentation to all the senior ministers of economics, for the forest industry. So there were about 6, 8 high-level politicians from the incumbent government to make the presentation to. And so I had it all there. There I had the opportunity to make, I couldn't say a word. Nothing. I froze. And I was so ashamed, but I had this immense fear of public speaking. Now, regularly I speak to hundreds of people, and it's all because of going to Canada, studying over again, knowing to prove to me that I can do it, and that belief in the foundation, attitude, passion, work ethic, and the other one is going to Toastmasters, and the other one is finding in 1997 at 57 ADHD, and then understanding it to be an asset. It's not a liability. It's a superpower. No question about that.
Well, and to your point, you said surprisingly you were a very good writer. Actually, that's really common with people with ADHD because we're incredibly creative because our brains make connections between things that neurotypicals just don't see.
Exactly.
Right? So like we find solutions to things, but we're also very good at coming up with arguments that are very convincing. One of my dearest friends is an attorney and he has ADHD, and he's the attorney that you want on your side if you're in a lawsuit.
I find it interesting that you say that. Actually, in my book, you will find that I litigated. I had never been in a courtroom in my life about quality standards in lumber. I don't want to go into the details of it, but it was something that I thought was local. Then I thought it was in the region. Then where there were 2 sets of standards. One were the official standards. The other one was far less restrictive than the other ones. And the industry had adopted the secret standards, and I happened to bump into it, and they nearly put me out of business. And I started litigating against the forest industry in North America. I could only afford one lawyer. I had never been in a courtroom in my life, and I was sitting with the lawyer on the counsel table. On the other side, there were 12 lawyers, intervening ones as well as the official ones. I won the case. I changed the grading rules in all of North America. Why? I know today why, and you know why, because I'm ADHD. I'm very, very good at analysis, and give me something I like and I like to do, and I'm very good at it,
Yeah. Well, the other beautiful thing about people with ADHD is we're thematic thinkers, right? So we can see patterns in a lot of different things. And I mean, you were doing this from so early on, and it's something that we don't credit in our society. Like, we don't look at people and compliment them on being a thematic thinker. It's something that there's no ranking for in school. There's no A+ you can get, right? So, but like, if that's what you're really good at doing, and everything else is kind of slipshod if you're interested in it or not. Like,
exactly.
Right? It's just so common that everyone with ADHD grows up with this really low self-esteem, which is so not earned, because most people with ADHD are brilliant in whatever it is they're interested in.
Yeah. And so the other thing that you will find once I send this book to you is that I had it nearly done. I was nearly finished with the book, So, and then one day I was sitting in the airplane, actually the plane between Victoria and Vancouver. I call it an overseas flight, the shortest one in the world. It takes 12 minutes, but anyway. So, and the fellow was sitting next to me, and he said the plane was full. And so the fellow sitting next to me, he said, "I don't know if you remember me." And I said, "I think I do." So he said, "My name is Tom Bromer, and I am the Vice President of Academics of BCIT, British Columbia Institute of Technology, and we talked about you were writing a book, this one." And he said, "Did you get it done?" I said, "I did. I'll send you a copy of it." And he said, "I like that." I said, "I'm working on another book that is ADHD Unlocked." And he said, "Oh, very interesting," because he said, "I'm working on a project, and that does something to do with ADHD." Then the plane landed, everybody had to go out. And I said,
Right.
"We should talk about that more." Anyway, so the following week, coincidence, there we back in the plane. He sits in 2F, and I'm sitting on 5A, and so the plane is full, and so again, a 12-minute flight. I said, Tom, stay by the gate, don't leave." And he said, "Okay." And the people are all saying, "What the hell is going on here?" So he stayed there. And I said about the book, "I'm going to send you a transcript. I need you to be involved in it." And what he was talking about is micro-credentials.
Yeah.
I had never heard of it, but it went like click.
Yeah.
Because what they say is there you put somebody in a school class setting for 4 years, and the core is less than 6 months. And then
Right.
all the other stuff is all secondary. Focus on that core credentials, whatever it is, to focus on, and then add the other things later. And
Right.
and so he wrote for me a piece that is in this book, because when I wrote it and saying, "Hey John, a beautiful, good book," and all the other things, but I said to myself, what is missing? Where do we go from here? That was missing. And then the recognition of it in the other things that I say, that slow learning is also affecting people affected by PTSD or trauma or other issues. And, so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, PTSD and ADHD, they have overlap in how it shows up, but also PTSD, if you already have ADHD, can exacerbate things way worse. And I am really happy about the fact that we're having so many really honest and vulnerable conversations about trauma, big T, little t, because it's really helping people see that oh, cool, there's a reason why I'm responding to this. And because, oftentimes when we hear of trauma, we're like, oh, well, going to war or, being in a shooting or something really dramatic, but it can also be something that's emotional,
Very much so.
Right. And I think most of us have little t trauma, I would be shocked if people didn't have, if they said they didn't, they genuinely did not have little t trauma.
I always say every family is somewhat dysfunctional.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, and the interesting thing is also trauma is passed down generationally.
No question.
So mothers, if you're pregnant and you are going through, say, a war or something, it actually impacts your DNA, and it can impact the DNA of your unborn child.
Exactly.
Or it can impact the genetic code that you're passing down with any children you have in the future.
No question about that. And then also, as I said earlier, in terms of PTSD as a result of the war, and then the inner child, so that, and then the other part that, against all odds, this book in particular is about that. It is about not hurrah, hurrah, John, how successful he is, but in particular at those areas of trauma all the way through my life that were part of it, and it kind of suggesting that staying the course, staying positive, believe in you and who you are. And that's likely where I kind of feel like your specialty is in terms of talking to entrepreneurs and other people that have problems struggling with it. Come at peace is who you are. And I gave a presentation yesterday to a class of about 40 or 50 people, young people in particular, and saying at the end the things that are important is so many people these days don't feel good about who they are, what they look like, or what this. And I say everybody is unique and beautiful in their own way. Find that peace within you. And then, because if you're fighting with that, then that makes it very difficult to provide the base on which to become successful.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that, because every single client I have, there's a moment where they are like, all these saboteur voices are coming up for them, that they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're not qualified enough, like their life isn't perfect enough, they can't be advising other people on this when they don't have all their ducks in a row. And the exercise I actually have them do is go to their bookshelf, because all my clients have personal development, self-help books, right?
Sure.
I'm like, cool, pull out 5 books.
Yeah.
And I have them go through the introductory section or the first chapter. And I'm like, cool, tell me where the author is bragging about how wonderful they are and all this stuff.
Exactly.
And they're like, they don't. It's all about how they crashed and burned their life in some way.
Exactly.
Or they were set off at a disadvantage. And like, these people who accomplish incredible things and just have like the guts to actually believe in themselves, and they stop being a weenie about it.
Exactly.
They get over this need to like match up with this perfect idealized self that they have in their mind. And they just go out there and be themselves. And it's magic when you do that.
It is, because again, and I'm a perfect example of that, because for me it really all started in my 70s, really, becoming an author, obviously. The other part is I became fairly active. I nearly killed me at one point in 2008. I had a case of diverticulitis. I don't know if you know what it is, but if it doesn't get attended to within 48 hours, then there is a danger of not surviving it. And
Right.
I came very close to. So at that point, I knew I had to take a look at myself and going to the gym in earnest, and and get a trainer, because otherwise I become one of, as we all have, right? New Year's Eve, we say we're going to do this. That includes going to the gym. We do it for 2 weeks, and we can find 100 reasons why we're too busy. Anyway, so I
Right.
did. I 2009, I went to the gym after I survived that, and had a trainer. And then after being there for about 7 or 8 years, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, John, have you thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Really?" and then I said, "Why not?" And so I started then putting a whole new spin on the training. And 2017, 18, I competed here in northern BC, bodybuilding and physique. By then I was about in my 70s already, and came in second in bodybuilding, third in physique, which qualified me for the provincials. Came in third in physique, second in bodybuilding, which qualified me for the nationals in the Arnolds.
Oh my God.
And then came COVID. And
Right.
so now I'm going to be 83 November the 1st. And I'm training again to compete bodybuilding physique in 2024. And so I'm sure I will get to the provincials. I'm sure I will get to the nationals. I told Arnold already I will be at the Arnolds as well. And so the point that I'm making is simply that be at peace with who you are. Everything is possible, and and make it exciting and build that passion, and and then and it will change your life and makes it much more interesting. For me, it's not so much that I'm the oldest active competitive bodybuilder in North America, apparently, and so But the point that I'm making more than anything is that all since that time, already being over 75, I became an author. Working on my fifth book, the fourth one, the three here, a fourth one. Interesting title, actually. Live Young, Die Old, and it's all about stay fit, be conscious of this precious body that you have. It's not the number; it's the quality of life. It's not saying. That's why I'm saying I'm going to be 120. So that's kind of how I'm living, and being careful with my diet, stay active physically, and that sort of thing, right?
Oh, 100%. And it's funny because you're playing into two really helpful things for ADHD. Is one, micro sprints. Where you have a goal and you're really working towards it. Because I'm sure you have a break after training, right? You're not just jumping right into training for the next one.
Right.
You have to take a breather.
Yeah.
And then also there have been a lot of studies, and I'm forgetting which I'm terrible at referencing stuff. But there have been a lot of studies that show that people with ADHD, if we do exercise that releases lactic acid, so that whenever you do a workout that makes your muscles really sore, lifting weights or sprinting, it actually has a calming effect on our brains, and it makes us much more able to focus.
Right.
So it's interesting that you were called to that in a way. Of course you had a reason to start working out, but in delving into who you are and figuring out ways to manage your ADHD, this is such a beautiful way for you to do that.
Yeah, and it complements all the other things and saying, "Oh my God, this is it's a life of opportunity and feeling good." And the other thing that I do is that I usually get up at 5:30 in the mornings, and I always feel like I'm late. And I always make my bed. I do. I always think I'm So I'm the kind of guy I love it. I work from 5 till 9, not from 9 till 5. That's that's my lunchtime actually, 9 o'clock. So.
Oh man, I can't do the 5 a.m. wake ups. I tried to, and it's I need a later start, so 7 a.m. and I need to spend a little time in my own head beforehand.
That's good too, Kathy.
Yeah. But it's we have this standard for, okay, everyone else who's successful does it this way. Okay, I have to do it that way.
No.
And it's so hard to break out of it. And I think a lot of people with ADHD and a lot of business owners think that they have to follow what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. And I would hope that is not the case, and I certainly not something that I'm saying. I'm simply saying it works for me.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And what is important for people to do is the other part that I have found is that a lot of successful entrepreneurs are ADHD, and I'm now even to the point. I'm always short on management, and I may put in my advertisement, people with ADHD will get a preference.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm serious about that, so, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
it's, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, there's a combination of ADHD folks are really creative when we see, really elegant solutions to problems. So that, lends itself to starting a company that solves a problem. And then there's also, we don't fit into neurotypical workplaces. They just don't work for us. So sometimes it's you have to be an accidental entrepreneur because the 9 to 5 is just not working for you. You have to find another way to make money.
No, that would not work for me. So. Yeah. If I kind of look at you now, tell us a little bit about the coaching that you are doing now, in particular as it relates to entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurial sector. Yeah.
Yeah. So I work primarily with folks who've started a business that is like an intellectual service. So
Okay.
coaches, consultants, lawyers, copywriters, online marketers. Because here's the thing, they're an expert at what they do.
Right.
And they spent a lot of time becoming an expert at what they do, but they don't teach sales in law school.
No.
They don't teach how to market yourself or how to figure out what your brand is or how to be comfortable showing up on social media and promoting yourself. And so I do a lot of training. I do a lot of, here's the strategy that I think is going to work for you, and then co-creating it with my clients, because there's no one plan that's going to work for everyone.
No.
Right. And then, of course, I'm a trained and certified coach. So there's mindset obstacles that come up throughout this. There's fears and there's limiting beliefs. And so we work through that. I also have recently become trauma of money certified, and I'm doing sacred money archetypes as well. So helping my clients really delve into any traumatic experiences that they've had with money in the past, working through them so that they can really have confidence in charging more and also just going for bigger money goals.
Okay.
So it's bumper to bumper here.
Yeah, I see that, because I'm trying to, so you go on a person-to-person basis more,
Yeah.
and especially with people that already have a record of being successful, but have issues that are in the way in between.
Yeah, it's usually like I get the career jumpers who are very successful. They're mid-career. They, are an executive or something. They've done really well, and they kind of have the golden handcuffs. But there's something that they want to do, and they get to this point in their life. They're like, it's now or never. I have to jump, and I have to do it now. But they have no idea how to do that because they've been in a corporate 9-to-5 for their whole career. As well as folks who have been just kind of struggling to get this business off the ground, had a little success, and they just need to understand what they're doing wrong, for one, and what they can stop doing, and also how they can be a little more time elegant in how they're, getting clients and how they're presenting themselves to the world. And I've also rolled out a couple group programs for the absolute beginners, because I find a lot of times, I get on the phone with someone and they haven't even figured out what they're doing yet. And it's like, okay, well, I would love to help you. But, if you're not sure what you're doing yet, it's a big investment for you to work with me one-on-one.
Exactly.
So I have some really awesome introductory programs right now.
So do you find in a lot of cases that self-confidence is still a problem, even with people that are successful?
Oh, 100%. 100%. There are doctors who've been surgeons for 30 years who feel like they're unqualified. It never goes away. There's always that voice. And I think we're so good at gathering evidence against ourselves for why we can't do stuff. For why, we suck,
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie Mean Girls?
No.
Okay, so it's about a bunch of mean girls in high school, which, I mean, if you know teenage girls, they're awful to each other.
Yeah.
And the storyline is kind of around, there's this book, the mean girls, they have this book, and it's called the Burn Book. And they say the meanest things about all the other girls in the class, in this book. And then it gets out and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we all have a burn book on ourselves. And it's so awful because we're gathering all this evidence about all the reasons why we're terrible and why we're not good enough. When really, we could be having a brag book. We could absolutely start collecting evidence as to, why we're great and why we're capable and why we're intelligent.
Exactly.
And owning those things does not mean that you're a narcissist. Doesn't mean that you're self-centered. It doesn't mean that you're stuck up. It just means that you're owning your powers.
Yeah. And what it is a lot of times is people don't particularly like success. They have to find an excuse for it, so that, you're lucky or, and I say the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? So that's kind of how it works. The other part that I use a lot of times, because I see negative, not with me, I'm past that, I think. I feel I'm pretty good, I'm okay. And So, and then every so often when people, put in question integrity, I say integrity is indefensible because your friends know and your enemies you can't confuse or can't convince. So what's the purpose? Forget about it,
Right.
So,
Right.
but I find that a lot of times as well as I interact with people is that they, and in particular speaking about entrepreneurship or other issues, just relating of interacting within groups or within companies, that they don't have the confidence in a lot of cases, and
Right.
which is very, very unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It it actually just happened for me personally. I had to walk away from a 20-year friendship because this friend is always tearing me down in little ways, and it got to the point where my whenever you start a business, this, like, it forces you to go through all your shadow work because
Yeah,
everything comes up,
yeah,
right? And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs see this like sloughing off of friends and relationships that no longer support them because they're no longer going along with these little like takedowns, they no
right,
longer believe it of themselves.
yeah,
And it's magic when it happens.
yeah, and very unfortunate, right? So that
Yeah.
if to be, and it appears to be so easily done is believe in who you are and be at peace with yourself, but it's still very vulnerable to a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. We talk about fair weather friends,
Yeah,
who like will ditch you, as soon as things go bad for you. Those aren't actually the worst people. It's the ones who can't be with you in your celebration.
right,
They may be able to be with you through all the rainy days and all the storms, and they're fine propping you up while you're low. But
right.
as soon as you start rising above, it makes them, it's not even that they want to tear you down, it's just it makes them feel insecure about where they are because they're not doing that growth. They're
It,
not going for what they really want, and it freaks them out that someone who's close to them has the balls to do it.
exactly, and so, and that's very much so, right? So, and then the advice that you would give to people in a general sense is be not afraid to show your vulnerabilities, and if there are issues like that, to engage somebody like that specializes in those areas, like yourself, and
100%.
and you do the same online, or is it in person to person, or also on the internet?
Yeah. So I do, all my clients are virtual. I have clients from Hawaii to Saudi Arabia at the moment. And I only ever had one client in person when I lived in San Francisco. But I mean, it's the beauty of the internet. You can work with anyone anywhere as long as the time difference works.
Look at us now sitting here.
I
It feels like you're
know.
sitting with me on the couch. I really mean
I know,
that.
it's so cozy.
If you see this setting, Katie, is that I'm sitting on the couch. Normally, I sit here. You would be
Uh-huh.
sitting here, but
Right.
it feels the same. I'm connected with you. I know
Yeah.
that, right?
Hmm.
So, and that's the benefit of virtual. There are no
Yeah.
boundaries.
Right.
So
I'm a big believer that this is one of the greatest gifts that the pandemic gave us.
yeah,
Is because a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable, doing so much virtually beforehand.
no.
And we got forced into it. We had to acclimate really quickly. And now it's so normalized.
And it's only at the beginning. It is still starting. Like, look
Yeah.
at us podcasting here, and more people are starting to podcast. Very interesting people from around the world that otherwise we would not meet, and we do meet them now. I had
Right.
an interesting podcast. I believe last week. An ex CEO of Amazon, an amazing podcast. I also did a podcast with Jen Scott. Help me here. Drummond. Yeah, Jen Drummond, who had 7 children, climbed every second summit on 7 continents.
You're kidding
Amazing.
me.
It's one of my podcasts. I think, but this was it 162?
I'm writing that down. Okay.
Was it
Um,
162, Scott? One? Or 161? No. Scott is trying to signal to me. You can say it, Scott.
161.
There you go.
161. Okay.
He won like this. So, and then, yeah. So and amazing, very, very interesting podcast. And then, we podcast all over the world, from Central Europe, from, as you do. And it's still on the beginning, in my opinion.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I actually, a side note, can I pick your brain for something?
Yeah.
Would you happen to know Jim Sinegal, the former CEO of Costco?
No.
Okay. I'm on a mission to get in touch with this man because he's like the hot dog king. He had this mission when he started Costco, or yeah, I think when he started Costco, he had the mission of having the hot dog that they offer at Costco only be $1.50.
Okay.
And so he's legend in the hot dog community. And the fact that my tagline is "Stop being a weenie," people send me articles on this man.
And
Because he's such an advocate for hot dogs, and like it's weirdly now my whole brand is "Stop being a weenie" and the hot dog suit.
I love
Um,
it.
I know, but I literally this week I sent him an email because I don't have any guests on my podcast ever, but I have this dream of having him on the podcast for like 5 minutes where we're talking about hot dogs. And then we kind of like, oh, what's this about? No, it's actually about business. Do you know anything about business? And he's like, oh yeah, you know.
Funny, eh?
So
Oh
if any
my
of your
God.
listeners know Jim and you're willing to put me in touch, please do. So,
Okay. So yeah, the Costco very successful, right? I'm trying to get in touch with Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Why not? You
you
know.
know, I used to work for an Elon company. I can't tell you I have any connections to him.
No,
But
no,
if
no.
I
But
hear of anything, I'll let you know.
yeah, let me know. So, what else comes to mind? The Katie.
So I'm curious if you had found out that you had ADHD sooner, what do you think would have changed about your life?
That is a very good question. I I felt, even when I was here already, up to the time that I was in my 60s, I felt I had been a failure. So it was 1990 when I went to Toastmasters. Up to
Hmm.
that point, that I was 50 then, so when I went to Toastmasters, was there for 10 years. Toastmasters started to give me I felt more self-confidence, that I could
Yeah.
stand up and that I could have a discussion. I say a lot of times, and you being around Toastmasters, I've seen examples of people that had severe difficulty starting interacting on Toastmasters. With all the ones that I've seen, hundreds of them during my 10 years with Toastmasters, I've never seen somebody as much as a basket case as me that really, really
Yeah.
feared at this fear of Toastmasters
Yeah.
and of public speaking and standing up. And
Yeah.
it changed my life. There's no question about that. That likely, and then it all started with being a failure doing the school, failing grade 3, failing grade 7 3 times. And all of a sudden, my friends that used to be around me were going to college and on to university, and I was a laborer. I don't see
Right.
anything wrong with that, but
Right.
then it had that, saying, "Oh, you are," meaning, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Right. Oh, 100%. And then on top of the fact that people with ADHD have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So
Yeah,
the fact that there's a difference between you and your friends and your lived experiences and their schedule. I'm sure younger you read a lot into them not being able to hang out with you at the time that you wanted to do, or
exactly.
not being involved in what they were being, involved in.
Exactly.
It's really tough.
So I
Yeah.
became a loner a lot of times,
Hmm.
but where it changed everything for me, is already after Toastmasters, and then the I gained that self confidence. I felt good about. But I had somebody ask me the other day. He said, "Well, how do you feel now?" I feel good. I'm
Yeah.
at peace with who I am, and I love
Yeah.
what I'm doing between the books, the podcasting, the public speaking, and then my companies, and I
Yeah.
enjoy it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And you also have this beautiful opportunity with your books and your podcast to share your experience and your wisdom with the world, which I think is so needed right now.
yeah, and which is such an amazing time, probably post COVID, where the virtual TV, the books has become something again very, very popular. So yeah, so the no, I have no particular regrets that I didn't.
Yeah.
It shaped me into a direction which has served me well.
Yeah. 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 So it sounds like your timeline was perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, Katie, I'm saying the right name right now, right?
Katie. Yeah. Yeah, you
Katie.
are.
Yeah, so sorry. So,
No, it's okay. It's Catherine in my email and it's Katie otherwise. So
yeah,
sometimes people mix the two. It's all good.
Katie, it was great podcast. I love having you, and we want to stay in touch. We'll send you copies of these 3 books, and then
Oh, I can't wait to read them.
and then we'll stay in touch.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you so much, John, for having me.
Yeah, Katie, my privilege. Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye bye.
You too. Bye.